What up, Doe? And welcome to Radicals for Good, a podcast about the quiet revolutions unfolding around us. My name is Shayla, and we're here at Moondog Cafe, sending them gratitude for letting us use their space today. Also, a special welcome if you are listening on Blue Moon Radio today. Radicals for Good is recorded on Wawayatsanan, the lands of the Anishinaabe peoples whose presence and resistance maintains today. We honor those that have made and make our city of Detroit possible. In this episode, we're going to talk about futuristic voting and how to be a more well-informed voter with Arabia Simeon. Arabia is the CEO of Politics on the Go, also known as POGO, and a community organizer as well, and a comrade. Welcome, Arabia.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm so happy you're finally on the podcast.
Yes, I'm super excited to be having this conversation. Also excited about being in this cafe and things like that, recording in the space. So
yeah, it's a good community space for sure. I love that. So first thing I wanted to kind of talk about is just like you as a full person, right? You have some degrees in computer science. You have some degrees in art. We talk about community and politics a lot when we get together. So tell me a little bit about like your interests, your expertise, and like how those go together with developing POGO.
Yeah, so I love this question. So a little bit about me. I'm actually originally from Brooklyn, New York. I moved to Detroit about 5 or 6 years ago. And I've always been really entrenched in like technology and art. I come from a huge family. Almost everyone is pretty much creative in their own right. And for me, I would say my journey started first with art, actually, wanting to like express myself and really express the identities and things that I was going through in terms of like social political things. So I would start by like painting, drawing. I did a lot of animation growing up and in college, and then I would merge that with my technology. So I kind of always had two passions, both art and then tech. And with tech, I just wanted to change the world. When I was younger, I believed in like Bill Gates. This is before I knew like what a billionaire was.
Right.
But like I literally, I was like, I'm gonna be the next Bill Gates. Like I'm about to change the world. I'm about to do something so scientific and technology based that it's gonna bring positivity to the world. And I do still think that technology can do that. So it basically taught me though to use technology as a vehicle for change rather than it being the actual change. And I think I've been able to merge art with that to utilize storytelling, and then it ties back to the community. I come from a very community oriented family. Both my parents have done things in the community. My mom used to do community initiatives and things like that. And then my dad also worked within the United States government within immigration services and things like that. So I kind of have like both sides. Have always been educated on my history and things like that. So that's how I ended up starting on my journey. And then fast forward, I actually started community organizing when I was in middle school because I got really tired of what was going on outside. Police brutality. I grew up in NYCHA, New York City public housing. So a lot of things around like housing crisis, people being priced out of their neighborhoods and gentrification. All of those things kind of radicalized me and really got me to a point where I wanted to make a name for myself, but also make a change within the local community that I'm from and the other communities that I'm a part of.
That's really profound, Arabia.
Thank you.
And you have like a steel pan and a picture of your parents on the altar.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your family.
Yeah, so I love to tell people I'm a proud Caribbean American. I'm both African American and person from Caribbean. Basically, my mom is a child of the Great Migration. Her family came from Alabama, both my grandparents, and then my dad's parents came from Trinidad and Tobago and Grenada. So I would say from childhood, I've always known, one, that I was like Black, and I've also known that Black is beautiful and diverse. So when people say Black is not a monolith, like I'm a living, breathing, like my existence is that, literally. Yes. So I would say my family instilled in me the strength in community, and strength in numbers. They taught me everything about understanding Black history and understanding where you come from, both on the American side and also being from Caribbean islands and things, and how intertwined our stories are. So that also kind of radicalized me when I realized that we are kind of all the same, even though we're not a monolith, right? But we're all coming from a very similar path in terms of like Black.
You have like a similar like heart. Yeah.
Yes, in terms of like the Black diaspora. So just a little bit more. My family is huge. I'm a super auntie. I have 6 sisters and 1 brother and a slew of god siblings. I'm at like, I think,
beautiful.
I'm definitely in the teens in terms of how many nieces and nephews I have. Like my oldest niece is like 19.
What a blessing.
Yeah. Wow. So I come from a huge family. My grandparents also come from huge families and things. So yeah, community is in my blood because we make up so much of the community.
Yeah. I love that. That's really beautiful. Cool. Yeah. And speaking of like your work in community too, like I really see POGO as a revolutionary tool. It's revolutionizing politics and how we think about voting in general. I'm also thinking about young people too and how it's engaging young people in voting. Can you talk a little bit about how the current system that we have and the current tools that we have in voting is excluding young people?
Yeah. So I'm going to start this from like an organizing perspective.
Yeah.
Because like I would say even as a youth organizer and a person that would like attend city council meetings while being in high school or attending protests and usually being the only people outside, like even that aspect in terms of the political system is really isolating for a young person, because a lot of the time we're doing things, putting ourselves on the line, getting in trouble with our parents, or our parents are anxious. Like I used to go outside, I mean in middle school, high school protests during like big protests, like George Floyd protests when I was in high school going into college and all that. And I would bring my cousins and my little younger siblings with me, and I would be responsible for them. But at the time, I was like 16, 17 years old, you know? So we would be running from the cops, doing all the things. But that's a really isolating experience to kind of go through by yourself, or not having the community all the time to talk about it. And I think as a young person, you feel all this energy to want to put your life on the line, to want to make a change. And we want to be like the civil rights leaders and all that, because you have to think about it. That's what we're learning about in school, right? That's what at that time period, that's what you're learning about. And then you're going into adulthood and you're realizing, it's actually not really like this. So I think it creates a lot of apathy for people. And going into the actual voting aspect of this, I think young people come into it with a level of dissatisfaction because the bubble is burst, right, when we become adults. And that's how I like to describe it. So it's not just the apathy, it's also the other circumstances of life. Like, yeah, like we can't afford to live and all the things. No, but go ahead. I want to hear.
No, I just want to understand like the bubble bursting. It's like you are thinking that social change happens a certain way when you're young, but then when you become an adult and like you actually are on the ground seeing the way that social change happens or doesn't happen. That's what you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think it ties directly into civic engagement and how people continue to show up past their first time voting. So for me, the reason why I started this, because when I voted for the first time, I didn't know anyone on my ballot except the presidential candidates. I was voting on an absentee ballot in the middle of my college mailroom. I had no idea what was going on. And that experience isn't just my own, right? Like this is a common experience. And then you also have to think about misinformation from where we get our news via social media and things like that. So the landscape itself, when it comes to young people, is that we're isolating them. We're isolating Gen Z, and not just Gen Z. We've isolated millennials as well politically, because we don't have a place to get our information that is reputable, trustworthy, and also timely, right? You shouldn't have to spend 2 weeks researching and going over 17 different websites and doing all these things to really understand what a candidate stands for. You should be able to have a source where you can go and find out what someone stands on. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, that answers it. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's so interesting too, because I think like the radical way that we should be seeing our movements, or like doing our movements, is following youth. Like youth should be setting the precedent. Youth should be actually the ones leading, and because they oftentimes are. And to your point, like they oftentimes are putting their bodies on the line and they are on the front lines, but they don't get the credit for it a lot of times, or get recognized in movement spaces. I've seen that a lot. And
this is a historical thing, right? Even if we look at the civil rights movement with like our grandparents or some of our parents' generation, right? Like SNCC, for example, a lot of the civil rights efforts in the beginning were led by people on college campuses, people who were quote unquote dodging the draft and things like that. Like people who chose to educate themselves and were around our age, or even younger sometimes, like 18, 17. A lot of people went to college at like 15, 16 back in the day. So like their movements, even that, the civil rights movement, we don't talk about the kids from SNCC or the children from, I'm trying to stop saying kids, that's why I said that, but young people. Were young adults, college students, as much as we talk about leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X and things like that.
That's so true. Yeah, absolutely. How do we go about changing that in our movement spaces and also in our political space?
Yeah, I think.
What do you think?
This sounds so cheesy, but honestly, it really is about meeting people where they are. So I think we're starting to see this in the digital space already, within like using influencers or collaborating with influencers and content creators to get in front of young people, both on the movement side and on the campaign political side. We're already seeing that. We're already seeing people implementing what I like to call citizen run media, where they're actually letting creators and regular people be the face of their brands and stuff. I think those are all great directions, or a good step in the right direction. I think we can take it up a notch though. In terms of engaging young people, it can't just be on the digital. We have to meet them where they are in person and actually create those third spaces. A lot of these things aren't isolated, right? The loneliness epidemic and misinformation on social media and the lack of third spaces, these are connected issues, right? Absolutely. So what I'm trying to do is create those third spaces for young people to actually come and have conversations about politics, whether it's through the movement side or the political side. That I think would be the next radical step outside of just the digital things, because if you can show them, hey, we come together and start building something tangible, then you can actually make change. I feel like that goes a lot further than just showing via digital social media, because at the end of the day, they're still looking to get involved in person.
Yeah, and that comes like with your understanding of like strength in numbers and community, right?
Yeah.
You're kind of basing yourself off of those values.
Exactly. And really, for us at POGO, we try to lead with like how your community is voting, building that layer of transparency and trust, and encouraging people to share their ballot, to share their opinions on politicians, to share events in their community and things like that. And we're building those things into the platform so that people can be using it all year round. And that's also the other part of it. It's not just showing up every 20 days or 2 days, like we were talking kind of before offline, like 2 days or 2 weeks before the election, everybody want to come out the woodworks and start asking us to donate to their campaigns and start, hitting us with text messages, like doing everything. And it's like, bro, what are you doing? Like, first of all, y'all got election day right when rent is due. I'm stressed. What are you talking about? Sorry, my New York accent is coming out. Well, I'm stressed. That's not me personally, but a lot of people be stressed.
No, I'm stressed. I get it.
Like, we got election day on the same time, and then you try to be prepared, right? A lot of young people in Michigan actually are voting on absentee ballot, which means if you're running a campaign or running a digital movement or any sort of get out the vote initiatives, you shouldn't be waiting till 2 weeks before. You have to hit them 40 days out, because most people are voting on absentee ballot now, right? So it's just changing that digital strategy and actually, again, meeting people where they are, giving them the tools that they need, that they resonate with. Like for us with POGO, implementing the Tinder design, because people love swiping on stuff. That's literally the simplest why we do it. So
Tell us a little bit about POGO. Like, talk about POGO. Give us your spiel about POGO for those that don't know about it.
So POGO, it stands for Politics on the Go. We are simplifying civic engagement for Gen Z and millennials. You can think of our web app as Tinder or a dating app in terms of the design, but for politics. You swipe on candidates that you most closely align with, connect with organizations. You can even compare two candidates side by side now, and then you do all of that to build a ballot in the app ahead of election day. And the goal here is to combat misinformation, build transparency between like campaigns and the actual voters, and then lastly, help young people build a weekly civic engagement habit.
It's powerful.
Thank you.
It's revolutionary. Absolutely. Are you seeing, like, what are you seeing with young people? How are young people talking about POGO? Like, are you seeing like the goodness come out of it?
Yes, we're definitely starting to see it, especially here in Detroit. Like, I would say young people are always excited when I talk to them. I think the most excited age demographic is actually like usually a little bit older than college students, like it's kind of the seniors, so like 21 to about 27. I've been finding have been the most excited about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And it might just be because like I'm like 29, so I might be branding, like my branding might just be around that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we're seeing most excited about the platform. In terms of like how people are using it and things, we're seeing people use it online, and like actually making videos. During the last election, people were like sending us text messages, sending us videos, being like, I love POGO. When I talk about it, they always get excited once I be like, oh, it's Tinder for politics, or it looks like Tinder, you could swipe on candidates. Or I say like, we do all the research for you and stuff, and usually that hooks them. We're also seeing a lot of like want to have more conversations in terms of the technology. So we're going to be implementing like conversational SMS is what we're essentially calling it. And that will be allowing us to like kind of have a conversation with POGO essentially. Okay. So not necessarily like an AI chat bot in a way that you would like ask, like, I guess you could ask POGO like who's on my ballot and stuff, but we're going to train it on the back end to like answer specific questions, help you understand what's on your ballot, what's going on in your local community and things like that. And that's stuff that people have been seeing. But in terms of the app, let me know if I'm rambling, but in terms of the app,
you're not rambling.
The thing that people are most excited about right now is the comparison feature. So we actually allow you to look at two candidates in the same race side by side, and we pull up all of the issues in our platform, and then we show you where they align on the spectrum.
Where was POGO when I was like a new voter? Because I would create Excel sheets. I would literally do all the research myself, and that's basically what I would do is I would put the two candidates side by side and like start looking at all like the important issues that I was thinking about when I was voting. And I have used POGO actually in like the most recent election. So I love that.
Yeah, we'll definitely try to use it for this one. We're also trying to reduce the barrier to entry. So for the general election, we'll allow you to use the platform without making an account and things like that. If you opt into the SMS conversational things, that will make your account automatically, so you don't have to put in any additional information outside like your phone number and zip code and things. Yeah, so we're definitely trying to like reduce that barrier of entry, again, meeting young people where they are. So use POGO, try it out.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And speaking of like barriers to entry, like I'm thinking about digital voting and what that might look like, especially in this climate of we're seeing a lot of voter suppression, right? We're seeing a lot of scary things when it comes to politics in the United States. How are you thinking about that, about the digital world and safety and access or barriers to digital voting?
So this is something I think about all the time, and why our product I feel like has changed so much. When we first started, we wanted POGO to be a mobile app, and I'm not 100% against the mobile app idea anymore or anything like that, but I eventually had to kill the mobile app because we were losing a lot of people in the onboarding process and even getting people to download it. They were really excited about it, but then when it came to download the app, they either didn't have storage on their phone anymore, or they forgot to download it because they walked away and did something else, right? So for us, we were like, okay, how can we reduce the barrier of entry? Let's create a web app. So that's what we did. And now we're implementing the SMS stuff. So I just think in terms of this whole topic of the digital world and politics, it's going to, for this to work, in my opinion, you have to be willing to be malleable and be able to be flexible and shift with the times. There's going to be new things every single day, and you have to shift with the technology at hand as well, but try to do it in an ethical way. I think there are a lot of different platforms popping up in the terms of digital democracy that are heavily relying on like AI and things like that. And we use AI in our product as well, but AI isn't the finisher, right? It isn't, we don't push straight from AI onto our platform. We always have a human check. We always also implement qualitative interviews with the candidates. So we're talking to candidates directly. We provide our sources. We provide fact checking. That's just a little tangent on that part.
Perfect.
But in terms of the digital voting, I see it as something where eventually people will be able to vote on their phone. I don't like to promote that at first, just because most people don't understand what that actually means. And in order for that to happen, we need to have a lot of data privacy and security. And that is the scary part and the risk for me. And that's why I'm constantly thinking about it. So I think the best way to go about it is kind of doing a data sharing model where people own their own data. And for us with POGO, that may be implementing blockchain. What does it look like to have a platform like this where people can opt into it and actually make money off of the insights that are being shared with our customers and things like that. I think digital democracy in terms of being able to physically vote is going to be a hard thing for us just because we don't have the regulation on the government end to protect voters' data at that scale. And that would be my biggest fear. So I'm not 100% against it. I'm all for technology and advancing things and using technology as vehicles for change, but I don't think we should do that at the expense of the voter.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. That's a great response. I have a question for you that I'm just going to ask it.
Yeah.
Do you think that voting is still worth it right now?
Yeah. So
comrade to comrade, tell me, what do you think?
Yeah, no, for real. I definitely think voting, I'm never going to say voting is not worth it. And the reason why I'm going to not going to ever say that is because, like I said, my family's from Alabama. Like, my grandparents had to go through the civil rights movement, and they had to live through times where they did not have rights at all. And I'm never going to not be grateful for what my ancestors, what the people before me have done. So I definitely think for me, voting will always matter. And I'm a believer of democracy. And again, doing it correctly, though. I think in this day and age, in this political climate, voting isn't the be-all, end-all. And I think we need to stop talking about it like that. And I think that's the real problem. There's so many other things that you can be doing with your civic power to actually enact change in your local community. And I also feel, even though we have a lot of things going on federally and globally, what's most important to me is local and state politics. I like to tell people, like, this has gone viral multiple times and stuff, but like, if you don't do politics, politics is going to do you. And I was just on the radio earlier today talking about this. Like, what that means for me is, like, it's more than just, you know, the repercussions of your actions of not voting versus voting. But it's also like, if you don't vote in your local elections, don't complain about the potholes and your rims getting messed up and you getting flat tires, my boy. Like, I'm not going to hear you. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Like, that's what, you know what I'm saying? So, like, if you feel like voting doesn't matter, what I like to tell people is at least vote in the local election. At least vote in the local election so that the things that you can have control over, you can actually show up to those politicians' doorstep and say, hey, I need this change, right? You don't have to fly to DC. You could go to where the mayor is at. I'm not enacting anything right now, but like you could go where the mayor is at. You could go to the school board meeting. You could go to the city council. You could call them. You could hit them up on Instagram. The city of Detroit responds to their Instagram messages. You could really do that, you know? So to me, it's about shifting.
There.
Yes, shifting the narrative around it. Like, why is it that we only talk about civic engagement every 4 years? That's not okay. I'm not going to stop preaching that. And I'm never going to ignore the people, though, who feel like voting doesn't matter. Tell me why you feel like it doesn't matter, you know? And I can tell you 5 reasons why or how your vote can directly impact your life right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I really like that emphasis on local and state elections. And I think that that's like so beautiful because it's about community, right? And I lost.
Can I also add another thing to that?
Yes.
The reason why I also feel that way is because on the local and state level, right, you have a more likelihood of knowing those politicians.
Yes.
And if you can get a politician in at a city board or a school board position and watch that politician grow, right, you can actually have a relationship and a real track record of seeing like how this politician went from a school board member to maybe, I don't know, on the state house or like state senate, things like that. Like those things happen, and that's what we want. That's democracy, right?
That's community. That's neighbors. Like so. The funny thing is Senator Stephanie Chang actually was someone that I volunteered with at the Grace Lee Boggs School when she used to work there, and so I've literally watched her grow from being like this community mentor of mine when I was a teenager to a senator. So I think like that's like there's like neighborliness, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I think everyone should have. Like we all should be able to hit up our politicians, the people that represent us, and tell us and tell them what we care about and hope that they change it. So that's how we get back to that level of democracy. And that's what our grandparents had too. Like, of course, obviously they needed the right to vote and stuff, but once they were able to, that's how you get people in office. That's how you build these more long-standing politicians that can really sustain different time periods and actually listen to the people.
Yes. Absolutely. What do you think are some tactics for intergenerational voting power, like building up that power? What does that look like?
I think one, it's going to be a lot of coalitions. I think for me, building voting power has been learning from my elders. I don't try to stray away from talking to older people and even letting older people vent to me. Like they're always telling me how young people don't care and all of that. They think I'm one of the good ones, quote unquote. That rhetoric is so played. But anyways, that's besides the point. I do think like building coalitions and things. I don't know. Is this a good time to talk about talk about the other thing we were just talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Please. Arabia, talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Okay, cool.
Let's talk about intergenerational civic power.
I was just thinking about like just Kamala Harris's quote around the coconut tree. I don't remember exactly what it is, exactly word for word right now, but definitely look it up. Do your own research. But she, during her like touring and stuff, I remember her talking about how we don't just fall out of a coconut tree, and how everything that we have going on is linked to like previous movements and our ancestors and things like that. And I also think with that, even though I think it's 100% facts, I always think it's so ironic that she's the one that brought it up because of like her political career and the linking to
the
her
decisions she's made.
Exactly, the decisions
have not made.
Yeah,
stances that she has not made. Especially around go ahead. It is ironic that she says that out of all people because she wasn't listening to Palestinian young people. Do you think as a candidate you fell out of a coconut tree? Like who do you think is voting for you or did vote for you?
And I think as a Black person, it's a complicated thing with that quote for me specifically, because like 100% I agree in terms of our historical context and just in general the political context around it. At the same time, I also think like what you just said, like, do you feel like you fell out of a coconut tree? And I don't think she feels that way. I do think though the conversation is, for me, when it comes to this, is about accountability. And the whole coconut tree thing for me resonates with the fact that in order for us to build civic power, people have to be willing to be held accountable for the actions that they take.
Yes.
No, we didn't fall out of a coconut tree. And yes, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams and greatest nightmares, right? But at the same time, just because I have that understanding doesn't mean that we're not going to have accountability. And I think that's about, for me, building civic power is rooted in accountability. And being rooted in accountability doesn't just look like, talking about it on a debate stage, but also when you're touring or when you're doing X, Y, and Z, actually listening to the voters that are coming to have discourse with you, even if it's interrupting your program. You know what I'm saying? I feel that way about all politicians. But in terms of the movements, same thing. Like, we can't shy away from having hard conversations, even if, it makes us uncomfortable. Like, that's what makes you a radical, right? Being willing to think outside of the box is what radicalizes people, in my opinion. So,
absolutely.
You can say whatever you want about people's political campaigns or their backgrounds or their decisions and things, but for us, building civic power starts at accountability.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think that's also just being in community. Like, you can't be in community with other people unless you're willing to take accountability for your actions and how you treat other people too. Like, you can't reap the benefits of being in a community, eating the food, going to a local cafe, or like anything. You can't do anything unless it's in community. So in order to reap those benefits, you have to also take accountability for your actions too. And so I love that, applying that same logic to our candidates as well.
Yeah. And in the intergenerational thing, like, a lot of young people have to understand that we don't know everything. And we also may have...
A lot of old people like me don't know everything.
You're not old.
I'm just kidding.
You're literally not old. Mind you, we're like 3 years now.
I know, that's why I said it like that.
But yeah, like, a lot of young people need to realize we don't know everything, and we have to be willing to be understanding and being willing to learn. And a lot of older people need to listen, take accountability for the actions and the way that they've impacted the world. And again, I use politicians as an example, and it's not to like harp on Kamala Harris or any specific politician, but this is seen in movements as well. Like, movements are not moving fast enough because people are not holding themselves accountable or allowing their members of their organizations, of their organizing groups, to hold them accountable.
Absolutely.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on this last question for you, like, a little bit. What does it mean to live a radical life?
I go back and forth about this because sometimes I'm like, I'm not radical enough, but then I'll be like, oh, the FBI. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding, for real.
We all can be more radical.
Yeah, I think for me, though, it's mostly about being willing to learn and being open to other people's opinions. I'm a very strong-willed, opinionated person, and sometimes I do think like, I know what I'm talking about. And especially if you hit on one of my topics, like the topics I know I'm an expert on, please, there's no arguing with me. It's no debate. But even in that, I can still see where people are coming from. So for me, being radical is constantly educating yourself, constantly being willing to learn, constantly being willing to engage in hard conversations. I think people discount the conversation part of being a radical. We always talk about, being out on the streets and protesting. We always talk about like showing up to politicians and doing X, Y, and Z, or calling your senators. We always talk about theory and the thinking part, but we don't talk about the oral history and the conversation and the discourse that's needed for these legacies to actually carry on and be passed down to people. Our ancestors, for many of us, didn't even have the ability to write this stuff down. So a lot of this was passed through orally. So being a radical is continuing that oral tradition, having real discourse.
I love that.
In a way that's safe for everyone. In person, yes.
Yeah, in person. Like, looping back to what you were talking about earlier, like having conversations actual person in real life. Because I think also too, like thinking about digital discourse, I'm often finding myself commenting on Instagram posts and like people are just like, they are just going in, and I'm like, I am a person. And yeah, like I am learning, but like I genuinely will be like, can you tell me more about that in a digital space, which is, I think, unheard of. Like people are just ready to go online. Whereas like when you're face to face and you're having a conversation, even if it is heavy, you can have like a human conversation.
And I also I would say this might be a hot take, but being a radical is also being able to see the nuance in situations. I hate cancel culture.
Yes. Yeah.
Personally, for me, I think we don't live in a society that gives us the luxury to fully cancel someone, because at the end of the day, we are humans. Unless you did some, now, again, this might be another hot take, because the other side of me, the more radical side of me is like, I personally think people deserve death if they like, assaults, or do bad, the R word, you know what I'm saying? But like, that's like the medieval times version of me.
Right. That's like violence, right?
Yeah, and that's
there's
different.
Like one thing to commit violence against someone else, and then there's another thing to just be like, I have a strong opinion about this one thing. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to be canceled. I also am against cancel culture, but like in the sense that if I believe that someone is always capable of change.
I agree.
And if they're willing to actually learn and listen, and then they can be in community again. Like you can repair that harm if they're willing to repair that harm, if they want to.
Yes. And I think the reason why I said that is because I feel like a lot of people make it seem like being a radical means that you just see everything black and white.
Right.
And you're an extremist.
Right.
And these are different terms.
Yes.
Like not every radical is an extremist. Not every radical is violent.
Yeah.
Some radicals will send you a 5-page, very like detailed letter of where you messed up.
Yeah.
Not everybody is going to be on this other tip. And I think that is something we need to stray away from the radical movement. Like, there are different types of radicals.
Yeah. You can be a radical for good, literally.
Period.
I love that. Speaking of like radical actions, what are some things that you would recommend listeners do after they listen to our episode?
Yeah. So first off, check out POGO. Yes. You can check out our web app at app.pogo, app.pogovote.com, excuse me. And then you can also follow us on Instagram at pogo.vote, also on TikTok. Other things that you can do is check out our this podcast and for next features. See what Shay has going on. But you could also check out our TEDx on YouTube. It's called From Likes to Vote, to just hear more about our background and the research behind what I'm working on. And then I would recommend a couple different books and things to get started. If you have not read A Map to the Door of No Return by Diane Brand, I would definitely read that just to understand a little bit more about me and my background. And then also The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. These books both kind of influence my outlook on life. And then in terms of more political stuff, this is a long list. But in terms of the more political stuff, there are definitely some tools that I would recommend. So of course, POGO. I would also check out Ground News. Open Secrets is another platform that highlights like financial data and especially like around who's donating to what campaigns and things like that. And just continue reading. I always tell people to just continue reading. Like there's so many more books and things that I can recommend, but yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And I think also like, speaking of our podcast, I think we need like a whole series on politics, because I feel like we could just keep going.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, to be determined, to be announced.
Yes.
Love that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Arabia, for being here, and hopefully we will see you soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and I really love what you have going on. Keep working hard. Keep doing great things. I love this concept, so.
Thank you. Thank you. You too. Yeah.
Period.
Thank you if you listened today on Blue Moon Radio. Thank you to Moondog Cafe. Thank you to my creative team. And thank you to all of my collaborators for helping us make this episode happen. If you have not already, please subscribe to Radicals for Good, our podcast, and follow us on Instagram, like and rate our episodes. And as always, the revolution may not always be televised, but it is likely within your own backyard, within your own ballot box, and definitely within your